Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Ortiz. I'm the Director of Student Success Outreach. Thank you for being here with us today as we welcome Chief of UMPD Tyrone Parham to talk about being first gen and mentorship. How's your day going so far, Chief?
It's going really well. Thank you for asking. How about yours, Adam?
Day's been pretty good for the most part. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you.
Um,
Me as well.
Excellent. So the first question that I have for you is, what does the concept of mentorship mean to you? And why is it important to seek out, especially for first generation college students?
Right. It's interesting because as I was a youngster and coming up in life, I never even really heard the term mentorship and, never really knew what it was about. So now being on the other end of this, I realize how important it is. And I will say, I think this is what my 30th year now is a professional, 30-year law enforcement professional on two campuses. I'll say for myself now, it's even more important to kind of pay it forward. As I was certainly there once, I realized the significance and importance of kind of passing it down and providing a lot of the knowledge and wisdom and experience that I've went through over the years. I kind of entered college in the dark. My parents certainly did not go to college, and but they wanted the best for me, and kind of went into a lot of it in the dark. And mentorship to me is so important. And to me the importance is really the emphasis on resources and seeking assistance, whether it be financial or internships or advising or just large places like UMass have so many resources. And if you don't know, kind of where they are or how to seek them out, you'll never really take advantage of large infrastructure such as UMass. And I think for me as well, just kind of from a mentorship, first time away from home, whether it be balancing kind of school, social life, work life, and all of the things of being a college student. I think mentorship, concepts are definitely beneficial. And I realize as I transitioned from, for example, from high school to college, I probably underestimated the transition. And it's just, the mentorship process is so important because it really does not only help shape your educational experience, but I'd also say kind of, potentially career paths and potentially the rest of your life. So, people like me and others, and I'd say, first gen students, definitely just a huge, huge part and huge time frame in your life that mentorship is crucial. And then lastly, the other thing that jumps out at me is mentors certainly help you kind of think outside the box and provide concepts and suggestions that you likely may have never considered. It's just kind of bounce things off, saying, "Hey, do you know about this idea?" And I'd also say, kind of as a mentee, I always suggest that people kind of keep their ears open and kind of, everyone kind of has their agenda, but open up that agenda, and mentors have a lot to offer that's kind of outside of the traditional box.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think particularly that note about finding resources and navigating the really large infrastructure feels particularly relevant at a school like UMass, where there's just so much that sometimes having somebody who can point you in the right direction is extremely valuable.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of that.
Well,
What role has mentorship played in your life?
yeah, it's huge. Again, as I was a youngster and growing up, I never really thought about it or took the time to really understand how important it was in my life. And as I reflect, I realize it may not have been called mentorship at the time, but it was certainly indeed what it was. I grew up in inner city Philadelphia. Going to college was certainly not a norm for people kind of around me. I did. There were a few that went to college, and I did really do a lot of observation, a lot of questions about those who did go. And I realized, for example, my decision when I was, in high school, I had entered basically a college Bound program in my high school. And that coordinator for that program was really, really, again, I did not call her a mentor in my life at the time, but just so instrumental, so supportive, so knowledgeable, and always there for not only me, but all of the rest of the students there, and really, I think, saw potential in us that we really didn't see. And it was, really, really, valuable to me. It was interesting. I'll never forget so she was kind of my college bound, kind of the particular program that I was in. But I also had a regular guidance counselor for the school that would help you do college applications. And I'll never forget my regular kind of high school guidance counselor as I was applying for different colleges. A couple of colleges, he told me I'd never get in. And I'm so glad I applied anyway, because one of the ones that she told me I would not get in ended up being the one that I got accepted to, and end up not only going to school there for 4 years, but then I ended up working there for 23 years and end up getting a master's degree as well. But the program coordinator for the college bound program was really, really influential to me. And then as I got into college, I actually started as an engineering major. I was good in high school, and I was good in math and science when I was in high school. And as I was entering college, I entered through a program set up for students of color where you would start in the summer. And there were two program coordinators there that were extremely influential and mentored me. Again, they saw things in me that I didn't see. Interesting enough, I ended up changing majors my sophomore year, and switched into criminal justice. But those two coordinators who were my initial program coordinators when I first came in, into the STEM field, I stayed connected with them for my entire 4 years in undergrad. And a lot of those students who were a part of the program, and they just really looked out for me, provided a lot of guidance and suggestions, and helped me think outside the box, and were really, really important to me. I think about that a lot in reflection. Another thing I think about is I entered undergrad as a 18-year-old. I was looking for a job, and even though I was an engineering major, I stumbled across a student security job. I didn't know exactly what they did, but I was looking for a job and said, "Oh, let me sign up for this," and not realizing at the time that I would be around a lot of the full-time officers at my undergrad, and many of them were mentors to me, not really knowing that. And they, as much as I thought I perhaps, as I was entering my senior year, I was applying for jobs back in the Philadelphia area. Someone said, "Hey, do you think about applying with us?" And those kind of informal discussions and kind of looking up to them in the last couple of years really helped me, apply, and end up being there for another 23 years. Probably would have never applied without those relationships and mentors around me. And then another reflection I have growing up is that in my neighborhood in Philadelphia, there were, in my small Philadelphia city row home block, there were three Philadelphia police officers who lived on my block, and they were, parents and dads of other folks, other friends that I had, and I never really asked them a lot of questions about policing per se, but I realized, in retrospect, that they really did probably have some influence in my career decision, and and indeed they were mentors for me. So it's kind of interesting how life kind of comes full circle, and how folks and influences around you at the time you don't really realize will have the impact on your life until later. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. That notion about a mentor seeing potential in you that you didn't see is a theme that's definitely come up in a few of these conversations. So makes me feel like that must be a really prominent part of being a good mentor, or experiencing that really powerful and impactful mentor type relationship. So Excellent. So, in your opinion, when is the best time to start seeking mentorship? And what's your number one piece of advice for those just starting out?
Yeah, that's a great question. Particularly for me, like I was very shy, not the most outgoing person in the world. Um, so I would say for even those with different personality types, and if you're introvert or an extrovert, I say the most important time is actually ASAP. It's right away, as for example, in this case, as you get to college, it's really reach out right away for opportunities for mentorship. And I say that because I think sometimes, or more often than not, I think sometimes it's not until students, for example, come up with life's challenges or where things get difficult that they'll kind of reach out. I would say actually reach out much earlier, again, because opportunities, words of advice, wisdom, and connections along the way all are helpful guidance, even if those mentors aren't necessarily helping at the time. Those initial conversations, kind of help build up long-term relationships. So I say, ASAP, and I'd also say reach out early and reach out often. Um, and again, as I mentioned, I was certainly shy and not the most outgoing person as I think about it at the time. You know, when you get to big places like UMass, these resources and mentors aren't necessarily going to reach out to you. So you kind of really have to, put yourself out there, even though that may not be your personality, but in the long term, it's definitely in your best interest to kind of think outside the box, get outside your comfort zone, and actually reach out to potential mentors. It's extremely critical. And it particularly as we're kind of used to a lot of times people coming to us, that's not necessarily the case. So being kind of putting yourself out there is extremely important. The other thing I would say is, and again, I had this issue as I was coming up is, I wasn't always coming with asking questions and I was afraid to ask for help. So, proactively I say, don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance, that it's not, any type of negative, it's not, that you're a failure. Most of our students who do become successful, they do that because they've raised their hand and they've asked for help and guidance. So drop the ego, drop the, I know everything, drop I have this, under control, but definitely don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. The other thing I think is while we use the word mentor and mentorship, for me along the way, it's a lot of the informal pieces. While we can set up formal meetings and we can be, as formal as possible, I think it's really those informal relationships that I really think help build the trust and long-term sustainability that's really needed. So I say, be informal as well. And I think the other reason it's important to get the reach out ASAP for mentorships is that places like UMass, we want to call it UMass, we want to call them offices, and we want to call systems and structures bureaucracy by the kind of the office name. But one of the reasons I think it's critical that you reach out ASAP is that you get to know offices and UMass as individuals and people to have long-term relationships and connections so that they get to know you as a name, you get to know them as a name. So it's really kind of and that takes time. Students are here for a shorter duration, likely 4 years or so. So it's critical that those relationships and collaborations and networking that it happens earlier versus later. And I also think while students think that they're here for 4 years, those relationships last well beyond that. Maybe another 10 years or so, you're seeking another professional opportunity or you're applying for graduate school, and just picking up the phone or texting or calling and saying, hey, do you remember me? Absolutely. You don't establish those relationships overnight. Those start early, and they take a long time to build up. So I'd say just don't think about the 4 years while you're here, but those relationships last a lot longer than while you're here. And then I would also say, is this the world? I didn't know at the time, but the world just becomes much smaller through networks and connections and collaborations. So the more, connections and networks that you create through mentors, the smaller the world gets, and other opportunities open up.
Excellent. It's funny you say that. I was just thinking as you were talking about the relationships progressing beyond the 4 years that I'm still in pretty close contact with the person who gave me my very first on-campus job. So you kind of never know. So this is all great. All of that was great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all that you just shared. All of it is so helpful. We're super grateful for your time, and hope that the rest of your day goes well. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.